but looks like I might be. Uh, let's check it out. Yeah, looks like I am. Maybe it's entirely possible I'm not. Okay, I am. Sweet. All right. Um, I'm not sure how many people are gonna be in this. I'm not even sure if you can hear me. But anyway, uh, I'm probably just gonna start talking because I've left this account open for like, man, I think it's been like 3 years um, since I've done much of anything with this channel. I did post like a little random Clover thing that I thought I wanted to do. I didn't really have like the patience to do it because, to be honest, a lot of the early chapters of Black Clover to me were so boring. Um, just because there was a lot of like filler stuff with like the Rebecca and all that stuff. But that's the reason why I decided not to do it. It was just it seemed too tedious of a task to do. But anyway, there's a lot of things I want to cover in this live today, and hopefully I get to it all. Um, but yeah, I think just to start, I'm gonna just be talking about how Lucius was supposed to be the king of the Spade Kingdom. Uh, I think I hear myself on this, so I'm gonna click out. But yeah, Lucius was supposed to be the king of the Spade Kingdom originally, but that right was stolen from him more or less. Whether that be due to chance or by active manipulation, he was kind of forced out of it. So the idea behind this actually starts with the picture that I have on screen right now, coupled with a page where meets CL for the first time. And CL tells him that there's a lot that I have to explain to you, and there's going to be some parts of this that are going to be difficult to accept. And, at first glance, it just seems like a big nothing burger, right? I didn't really think too much of it when it dropped. Uh, but then, like, looking back on it kind of recently, you're thinking, well, got his entire, like, the only missing portion of his life explained to him visually by Ralph. So, what else is there that needs to be explained? Um, it just doesn't quite make any sense. And what part of that would be difficult for him to accept, right? Because he knows he's royalty. He knows he comes from. He's the son of a slain king, and he was separated from her for his entire life, and it was because of the triad. So what is it that CL knows that doesn't? And again, what part of that is difficult to accept? So then you start kind of asking some necessary questions from that, right? Where it's, what part of Hino's past would he not know? And that would just be the things that predate him, right? So it'd be familial history. Um, on top of that, we have to look at CL herself, because why was CL able to survive the coup? And on top of that, how was she able to survive for the span of what, 18, almost 20 years without ever being detected by the triad or any of the disciples in the kingdom that entire time? Um, and why does she still look as young as she does? I think that's kind of the issue with most of the Spade characters that we get, right? Is um, we had the triad come onto the scene looking just as they did um, when they overthrew the Spade. And oh shit, I'm just now looking at my chat. How's it going, Pepsi Pimpin, WK, and Jordan? What's going on, guys? I'm gonna see if I can turn down this monitor really quick. telomere lengthening is actually uh, the most solid idea I've got as far as why they look so young. Because other than that, it makes no sense. Um, Maybe. Can anyone hear me? Great, we're back. Perfect, perfect. Um, Jesus. Sorry, I'm rusty at this whole thing, but we're getting there. So one last go at this really quick. Oh, beautiful. Okay, cool. I just didn't want to hear myself talking as I'm making sure this stream is still up and all that goodness. Okay, cool. Let's get back into it. So, um, yeah, uh, we don't know why these guys are all appearing so young, younger than they should be, given how much time has passed. And Me and WK were just texting each other because I was writing out the article, attempting to explain why Lucius is this forgotten king of the Spade Kingdom. Um, but I couldn't follow through with it because there's this weird time gap that maybe we'll talk about a little later. Um, but yeah, just to get into this, we look at this picture and you kind of have to start contextualizing like what's really going on here. The villain has an origin story, and most villains end up making sense towards the end. And my attempt here is to try and give us a backstory for Lucius before we actually get it. Um, and to me, this picture shows where Lucius starts becoming this character whose views start getting warped. Right, he's a sick man um, physically, and he's got the triad out there as children, looking towards the Spade castle, and we get a sort of similar scene with Asta, but it's a much more triumphant scene than like this more solemn type of scene where it looks like a man is maybe losing the last bit of hope that he's got. Um, and and this is what drives this parallel between the two, between Asta and Lucius. Um, so here, let me just start telling the story as it is in my head. Right. So, as some of you guys might be familiar with, I do believe that the triad was made by Lucius using his own uh, body as far as blood, flesh, and bone go, like literally from his own body, and instilled the. That's a wild Helix. I don't fart, and everyone knows that. So we we get these three beings that are made from his body, and they're also made from parts of his psyche, right? And we've talked about this extensively, but they're made from the anima, uh, the persona, and the self. And he would be the shadow in this case, his own shadow. Meanwhile, we're led to believe that Julius is also within the same vessel, which ends up being a little bit confusing. So, as we talk about the story, there's going to be a little bit of like side tangents that really start to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together, right? So, um, I'll make the assertion now that Yuno and Lucius are 100% related. Whether that be his direct father or at least his uncle or a little bit more of a distant relative. Um, One of those things. Now, yes, I am absolutely saying he's created his siblings. I would pull up the info card um, that makes me believe that they're not, actually siblings because it's not stated to be that way. But the info card actually puts siblings with a question mark at the end of it, and that question mark is in parentheses, along with the attributes of Lucifero and Beelzebub. Uh, so the relationships and the true attributes are not directly as they seem, which is why I think that way, just to make it clear. So, um, when it comes to Julius and Lucius, we're we're kind of led to believe here that Lucius is in the front seat of this vessel, and Julius is in the back. Now, as far as the two souls things go, and why it connects to and him being related, is because these two are the only instance in this story where there are two souls sharing a vessel by birth. And this is not due to reincarnation spell or any kind of other spell, as far as we know. So, with that said, to me, it seems like this would be some kind of genetic trait that's been passed on to and with the lack of information that we have about CL, it's difficult to say whether or not she's got two souls. Um, but maybe later I'll go into something that explains a bit of the Greek lore that goes into this and how it kind of does come together if CL does in fact have two souls. Um, but anyway, Lucius's second soul is different from Yuno's second soul in the way that Yuno's second soul is, let's say, pointed in the same direction as him, to where they work and exist together, um, and they're able to have two attributes. Well, Lucius has two attributes for now, and we'll get to why I think Julius originally did not have an attribute. So Lucius is born with the soul magic. He's got this passenger, Julius, who is more of a quiet soul. So I'm going to be using the terms quiet and loud soul, where has a loud soul that is almost integrated into his original soul, but it is separate from who he is as well. Whereas the quiet soul would be Julius, where he's more of a passenger. He's got his own consciousness, and it's active, but he probably didn't have an attribute for himself to share with Lucius. As far as where he got the attribute, I believe that the first instance of incarnation is Julius himself, Julius and Astaroth. So we have to understand that Damnatio brought us information saying that Astaroth had been missing for about somewhere in the span of 18 to 20 years, which is exactly enough time for the Triad to grow up, get into the ranks of the Spade Kingdom, and all that good stuff. But when it comes to this devil binding ritual, Lucius has to offer the devil something, and as we've seen with Noct and Asta, that usually is the soul. For Asta, he's able to use parts of his body to sacrifice, right? So we look at Lucius and we see he's coughing in a couple panels in Xenon's flashback. He's obviously sick, not up to par with everyone else. There's no way he's going to win a fight with Astaroth. In no way, shape, or form, no matter how special his magic is. In the state that he's in, it would be very difficult. We've seen time magic at work, so we can kind of assume what Astaroth would be able to do in full form. We would have to assume that even though a lot of devils, except for Adramelech and Lucifero in some instances, have not really given us like the craziest speed feats ever. They kind of just tank whatever comes their way. And we saw Zagrid. He was kind of keeping up, but he wasn't really up to par with some of the outdated mages. So he's a lot slower to the mages currently, and he would just get mollywopped right now. But so how does he end up binding Astaroth to them? He throws the fight. It's really as simple as that. He might put up a little bit of resistance, but he throws the fight, or they come to a mutual agreement. And it could be the mutual agreement. I personally like mutual agreement more than Lucius throwing the fight, but either way it goes, the body is used to capture Astaroth, and from within, Lucius is able to use the soul magic to take over and incarnate that soul with Julius. And we see what happens when he's incarnating these souls. He's also kind of brainwashing them as well, manipulating their minds. So we see evidence of this also with Xenon, where their memories are manipulated. Um, for Xenon, he just can't see what Lucius looks like. Um, and that's another thing we'll get into a little bit later. So all of this is said to kind of build up to the story of, so like, let's say, let's go with the dad scenario, or Yino's dad. Lucius and CL are like together, and they may come from two different bloodlines who battle the throne. And in my head, I think it makes sense that these two bloodlines were rivals to the throne for a long time. Like, this is how it's always been. Um, and to paint the picture, Xenon even gives us the two ancient devils that were in the Spade Kingdom fighting each other. And he frames it as if they were friends. They could have been from either the same bloodline, maybe split, like cousin type of thing, or just two separate ones going head to head. And they were sealed away. Now, in the case that they're two different bloodlines feuding, it's like a Romeo and Juliet story that I'm thinking of. I'm going to get past this point, then I'm going to look at the chat. I see there's a shit. There's 13 times more people than I thought would be here. So thank you for being here. So in my head, it's like a Romeo and Juliet story. Lucius being Romeo, Juliet, CL, and this love is forbidden, of course, right? They're not supposed to be interacting at all, and maybe they don't even know that they're not supposed to be interacting. And they get to a point where just before anyone takes the throne or battles for it, they end up, sorry if there's any children, but they end up having sex and having a child. Like, but it's very new, and I'm talking like the progression from the sexual relationship to the throne is very close. And just to like kind of fill in some holes that we don't directly get for context, this could have easily been a curse that Lucius is afflicted with. Why he's coughing, why he can't walk, why he's in that wheelchair and all that stuff. So this could have been from someone catching on to this forbidden affair and cursing him, and maybe even his own family does this, because we can associate curses with devils, Magicula mainly, but we do see that, I guess, contracts with Magicula predate any contract with any other devil. So we could maybe assume that it came from within his own family, and they cursed him and extradited him, which is why he's on the outskirts of the Spade right now. So imagine what that would do to somebody. You get into a relationship, now you're unfit to be a king health-wise. You can't even battle for the throne if you wanted to. And then you just lost your girl to some other guy. And the way I have it in my head as well is that this looks like any other kingdom we see in the in Finral's family. The marriages are arranged for the women, and this is to maintain or gain hierarchy and status within the kingdom that they're already in. So I imagine it's the same for women in the Spade Kingdom for these royal families. So Lois is more of a outside bloodline, maybe not feuding, but is definitely qualified to be on the throne as well. Ends up taking CL's hand, but does not know that she's already pregnant by the time he gets to her. Was born, and now we get to some of the content within the series, where we see the Triad infiltrate the ranks of the Spade Defense Force, right? And then we have to think of the plan. Where's Lucius involved in this? And again, why was CL able to escape while most of the other people weren't? Before I answer that, I just, like I said, I want to look at these chats. Yeah, I don't fart. That's not even a thing. I don't even have an anus. Answered that. So Vintage, you said, I feel like It's the story of two brothers in the Spade, and I feel like that's what Yuno's mom tried to. Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. Dr. Faust, how's it going? Speak mystic to me. That's crazy. Um, Leo, welcome from Twitter. Uh, Vanessa, thank you very much, and hello, Shark Boy. How's it going? Do you believe Beelzebub is alive still? Personally, I do, and it's connected with the Lord of the Rings. So am I saying that right? Lord of the Rings. Um, I don't know too much about Lord of the Rings, but yeah, I do believe Beelzebub is alive. Um, in fact, I just posted today like one of my, I guess, crackhead theories is that Lily will come back as reinforcements, and she'll still have the power of Beelzebub intact. Because as long as Ost is not using the causality break, um, I guess, spell that he's got, there's no reason for those devils to leave them. So, if anything, he's only cut the connection to Lucius and the brainwashing that he did for both Lucius and Damnatio. Um, yeah, I feel like she will come back with both spatial and water magic, hopefully using it in a much better way than she was in Hino, and come back also with Damnatio. Um, I think it would be really cool if Lily, she's still not a fighter no matter how we slice this. So she wouldn't be like the best reinforcement in my opinion. So I would hope that with the plethora of power that she got from the incarnation of Beelzebub, that she's able to open a portal and get the rest of the Ryuzen 7 onto the battlefield as well. That's kind of my take. And I'm thinking that you maybe could be alluding to like a past theory of mine where I still believe that the Order of the Flies will descend the rest of the devils into the real world. I still 100% believe that. So yeah. When do you think Lucius will get a flashback? I think it's coming soon. He's going to have to get his back pressed up against the wall, which I think it'll be probably during the fight, like the climax of the fight between just him and Yuno, because their histories both relate back to the Spade anyway. So whether they're related or not, I think we'll get it. If not in these next coming chapters, it has to be the ones after these. You think Lucifero will come back somehow? Ah, man, that's a tough one. Um, it's kind of hard to come back when you see his heart get eaten. You know what I mean? I don't believe he'll come back. I think something a little more interesting might happen. It's probably might by now my least popular theory, but um, I think there's another devil that's been waiting to either regain or steal Lucifero's spot as King of Devils, which would explain why Adremelech didn't touch him. Um, Feed my head canon and believe Noelle will have ultimate magic in Monozone. Doesn't she already have Monozone? Yeah, she does. Wait, no, she doesn't. Um, but she can make any Monozone hers. That's the point of like the Valkyrie armor. That's why they say like she swims through the air. Ultimate magic, yeah, she should. I don't know why she's been slacking on that, but I'm sure she'll get it for sure. There's no reason that she wouldn't, in my opinion. But yeah, okay. It looks like I'm caught up. So back to this. I don't even know where I left off, to be honest with you. So. Okay, why was CL spared? So here's the thing. Um, we get to the coup that the Triad, you know, goes through, and the plan is obviously kill Lois. Now let's talk about this fight really quick because between a Sun Mage and a Gravity Mage, and I know times were different and all that stuff, and this could really just be a testament to how strong a Devil host is, especially one that is hosting Lucifero. Um, but you would think it wouldn't just be a complete body, right? of a fight, Lois literally loses his head. Like, it was just a plain dry fight, and Dante completely outclassed him. And my thoughts on this kind of go back to what we see in the Clover Kingdom, where Lois might not have been all that he was cracked up to be. Not to say he was a bad king like Augustus was, but look at what Augustus is. He's a weak he's a weak king. His power is really just for show. He's got a lot of magic behind him, but he's not a battle mage. So I have to believe with, to how little resistance was put up against Dante, that Lois was really not much of a mage, as far as battle goes, at least. And the start of this whole theory was thinking maybe Lois just didn't have sun magic, and there's nothing to really confirm that he did. Uh, just the story of the moon and a sun mage coming together, creating a sun that has star magic, and this goes back into being the potential son of Lucius. There's a video that I made that talks about the potential of star magic. And part of the lore of stars is that the stars are supposed to be the souls of the dead or even angels. So with that said, if you combine someone with soul magic with a celestial mage with moon magic, which the moon is also related to souls, I can see how stars could come about. And then we can also see how a second soul comes out of this as well. So to me, putting those things together aligned them much closer than originally thought. Now, I do want to talk about an instance that happened in the anime during the Spade assault. Or not the Spade assault, but during the coup. Dante and Vonica wanted to go kill Yuno. And Xenon takes on this task himself. He says, I'll do it. Now, Xenon goes maybe a little less than halfway to like catching up with Ralph's dad. And when he gets there, they're getting to the strong magic region, and he kind of just lets it go. He's like, if you want to kill him, you better go chase him, and leaves it into the hands of the grunts. And he just turns his back, and we just assume that he goes back and tells the Triad, like, yeah, he's dead. But let's then go back to the fact that there is some type of discrepancy between the Triad and Lucius. There's no reason for family to have their minds manipulated and washed in a way that they can't remember the face of Lucius. Dante and Vonica never even mention Lucius at all, in any sort of capacity. So that leads me to think that this psyche, the split of his psyche, has a little bit more credence, a little bit more weight behind it. Because if we look at what he says to Xenon in the flashback, he says that you're the most like me. You have the same aptitude to host a devil as I do, the most, even better than Dante and Vonica. With that, he also looks exactly like Lucius, just if he were younger. So all of this, of course, I just have to keep reinforcing the fact that Xenon is going to make decisions closer to what Lucius makes. And if Yuno was really his son, I don't think Lucius would carry out with killing his son. Not at that point, at least. Into like a younger mindset, which is Xenon, he might be a little bit more fragile. And we do see Xenon as more fragile than the others, just by what happened in his own past, killing his own friend. What does he then look like killing a child? This is not up Xenon's character alley, but it is up his alley if he willingly spares that kid. Whether he knows or not, maybe it was more of a subconscious thing, but he knew being part of Lucius. So now we get to like and Xenon's fight, and it looks a lot closer now when we think of them as actually kind of blood related here, as Xenon is a direct part of Lucius, and is an actual born son of Lucius, um, and then wins out, um, because that's just how familial things go. Usually, the children of magic become stronger than the parents. That's how it's supposed to be. Um, so with with these things considered, I want to I want to get into what's happening currently, and maybe we'll circle back if you guys have some questions about Lucius being the like forgotten heir to that throne, um, and later on we'll get into the lore that talks about like the how it comes together, the two souls and Greek gods that are involved in this that end up making sense in the very end. Um, but let's talk about what's happening currently. Um, because we've got with anti magic. He's got the sword as well, um, and it seems to be evenly split. Right, he's got half his stars, half his body cloaked in anti magic. The other half is cloaked in magic. Um, and so this is supposed to be reflecting um, how close is to the elf inside of him, and how close that elf is to that sword, um, and whatever power it's attached to, right? As well as the brotherhood that and Asa share directly. So it's like it's a double whammy. He has every right to that sword, which of course, it's not an Aspel, and if there's anyone that thinks it's an Aspel in here, I'd love to know why in the chat. But how's this fight gonna go, right? I think this is a really interesting fight, just in the way that I don't see the point in having both regular magic and anti-magic. I feel like it should be all or nothing. At this point, anti-magic is his best bet. If he does anything with the regular magic, it should be notice. So while he wields the Demon Dweller sword, he should have notice ready to go, which would be really nice to see a sword and shield type fight from him. Or wielding the Sword of Zephyr in the other hand, which I would not like, because all of his weapons are double-handed weapons. And it just wouldn't look right to me. Unless he develops a different kind of sword, then I guess that works. But I think it makes sense, sword and shield. That way he can just neg all of the spells that Lucius throws at him, and he can block them if they get too close, too much to neg, right? In this fight, I think some interesting things will happen. Like I said earlier from one of your questions, I do think that we'll get more of a backstory, because their backstories both go back to the Spade Kingdom. So it'll make sense in the very climax of their fight, like what's going on, kind of like in a Xenon type of way, where is able to send him into the flashback, but I don't think it'll be like that much of a wash. I think will pose a good enough threat for him to be like, all right, let's talk, because he does acknowledge, he says there's one timeline in every single one I win except for that one, and it's you. So he's probably going to be more candid with him now that Ost is off the field, of course, too. But there's going to be a point of despair that I think we're going to see. And it's not going to be because despairs. Is definitely going to be pushed to an emotional limit. But let me just say it outright. He's going to get a fifth leaf on his Wind Grimoire. And it's not going to be because of his despair. It's going to be because of the elf's despair. And that was something like, I think we all know like that's coming, right? He's got the 4-leaf. This whole series is based off a boy with a 5th leaf. We saw one of the very first issues we ever had was, trying to a demon or a devil trying to obtain a fifth leaf, and then turning another four leaf into a fifth leaf. So it's a backbone of the story. Um, and at this point, we've never seen a four leaf stay a four leaf, if we're being completely real. So it's almost like they're destined uh, for that despair. Uh, Now let's talk about how that elf ends up despairing, right? We obviously see the elf is conscious of what's going on, but they both him and Yuno are aligned so much they're almost indistinguishable, yet distinguishable. There's something that we just got, and it didn't really hit me until like maybe a couple days ago. Whenever that new color page dropped of everyone in the battle right now, Gordon uses Cursed Worker's magic on Charlotte and William, and we see William's true face and how he's supposed to look, and he looks exactly like Lit. This was something that I didn't even get when the elf arc was happening. They're like, you know, you're this is Lick's body, obviously, and I just didn't see it because he looked nothing like him. You know, the scar, the hair was a little bit different. You know, it just wasn't there for me. But now that everything's lifted, his hair's grown out. The kid is licked. He's literally licked reincarnated, right? Without light magic. So my thing is that Yuno has always had this crazy strong attachment to William. It was almost came out of nowhere, right? From the very beginning. And William has always had this strange attachment to Yuno. And ever since the Elf arc, I've found William's existence completely pointless. Um, you know, of course, in the Spade, he was kidnapped and used as the key to the underworld. Totally fine. After that, had no actual purpose. He gets zero gift within the first 2 seconds of Lucius arriving to the Clover Kingdom. He just serves no actual purpose. I hate the guy, to be honest with you. I really do. But now that he looks like Licked, I'm thinking his death is supposed to bring consequences to whenever it happens, right? His death for the Triad was supposed to bring about the advent of Klippoth. His death here could bring about the despair of Yuno and the elf soul within Yuno, Lick's child. And it would parallel what just happened with Asta and Liebe. Liebe saw his mom, who actually raised him, right? But Asta also saw his mom, understood it's not his mom, but Liebe just couldn't get his mind to get there, right? So their connection became separated, hence why Devil Union came off. And that was what was taken advantage of. Now imagine something similar happening while they're fighting. Lucius is no stranger to like taking hostages, delivering the lowest of blows. He did that to Asta and Lily. He just did it again to them with Lucida. So what makes us think that he's not going to do it with Yuno? And that's the closest person that he's got. Other than that, he can take almost anyone that's not Asta, and they're going to stay in the game as they are. They might shed a tear or two, but he's not going to full on despair. It's William that's the key to that. So we get to this point of despair. The fifth leaf is sparked. And Yuno will lose that fifth leaf grimoire. He's not going to keep it. We've never seen a mage who's despaired keep that grimoire. It will remain unclaimed until there's a suitable vessel for it to be drawn to. And right now, the only person that can do that is Asta. And I think it would be really cool to keep drawing these parallels where every time Yuno gets a power up, Asta gets a power up. And so I hate that I'm not doing this on my computer because I'd be able to show you the article that I wrote. But there's an article, if you guys have time, it talks about let me see what it's called. Because I think of all the articles I've written on here, this article is very relevant and actually somewhat profound in the way it's supposed to work. Oh, there we go. It is called the Fifth Leaf Binding Ritual, a hidden exchange of power. And it's got Patri as the cover. So when we talk about a fifth leaf Clover Grimoire, I don't know why I spaced my words out like that. That was annoying for me. But anyway, when we talk about that, we're talking about the four leaf mage losing their connection to their own grimoire, while another being takes over the grimoire, heightens their own magic, and the reality is that Zagrid more than likely had access to Patri's magic as well, but there's no real use for his magic at that point in time. Zagrid had unlocked a much more lethal power with the grimoire, as we saw with the things from the other world. His word magic is end all be all type of magic, but just got outclassed by arcane mages, right? So, the entire time Zagrid had the grimoire and he was alive, Dark Elf Patri was able to use, as Zagrid called, the scorched version of his own spells. But we get to the Spade arc, and he comes up to us and goes like, "I'd help, but I'm actually fucking useless without my grimoire." But he still has a grimoire pouch, so that was what caused me to look into it a little bit more. We would assume that with Zagrid's death, the grimoire also disappeared, since it became Zagrid's. But I do want to paint the picture of how the five-leaf binding thing is supposed to work when you don't have a cocky devil just playing around. So, say Zagrid was on his P's and Q's, stopped, thinking he was better than he was, and playing with his food. When he got the grimoire, he was supposed to kill Patri. So that way, he could get the magic, which is why he probably didn't use it, because Patri was still alive, can't use the magic. Unexpectedly, Patri is saved by Asta and his anti-magic and the causality breaking spell that he has, and comes back, but is still able to use both the regular version of a spell and the demon light version of a spell. All the while, Zagrid is still alive, not using any version of light magic because Patri's still alive. Now, the things happen in reverse. Zagrid, the stealer of the grimoire and should have been the magic, dies, which means the grimoire died with him, meaning that it took all the spells, scorched and unscorched, from Patri, leaving him completely useless, as we saw in the Spade arc. So now, as long as Asta is able to keep this grimoire alive, he's able to use an extension of his spells, maybe even spell to an extent. But would still be in the fight as long as that grimoire is safeguarded and not destroyed. Part of this goes into there could be a little bit of a fight of like who gets that grimoire. We have Adramelech lying in wait. We don't know if Lucius can wield a five-leaf grimoire. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to with Lucifero's core. So there could be like a three-way little battle for this thing. And of course, if Adramelech or Lucius get it, that means has to die for this to mean something. And then for Asta, this could just mean keeping him alive. Either way, this spell's like, it's a really cool, sorry, there's like a street sweeper. It's kind of late. That's annoying. It's annoying. Sorry. ADHD's kicking in, guys. It makes for a really interesting scenario to have this kind of three-way battle, because then it exposes Adramelech, right, onto like where his allegiance really lies, what his agenda really is. And then, gives Asta this opportunity to have this really cool moment where he also gets the second grimoire. So I think that could be really, really awesome to see. There was something else I wanted to add. I just want to check my thing here. Um, Yuno's fate. That's what it was. Okay. So Yuno's fate is a bit up in the air. So Lucius has this grand plan to make perfect bodies, meaning like he knows the key to make the strongest body or even just whatever kind of body that he needs at the moment, right? The thing is that his own body is imperfect as it stands. Still to this day. Imperfect. And the reason why I know that is because he still has to switch between his time grimoire and the soul grimoire. This is a drawback akin to what Asta sees with his swords. Having to sift through the swords in his grimoire caused him to lose Lily in real time. That was the exact reason why he lost that fight and he lost Lily to him. Was because he couldn't get to that sword in time. Now, Lucius hasn't had an issue getting to any type of spell, but just imagine this guy has access to any spell, any grimoire that was in the Clover Kingdom, but he still has to switch between these two very vital attributes. And it's due to the reason that he's got a soul that is not aligned with his own. But Yuno does have that. And he's actually got a magic that I would assume Lucius wants, but he can't get because he hasn't extended his range to the Spade Kingdom yet in those grimoires. So say he does kill Yuno right off rip, he's going to lose out on that star magic right then and there. But the way he won't is by stealing Yuno's body. If he steals Yuno's body, then he will have access to the star, the star magic, the wind magic, and his magics as well. And maybe the way that Yuno's body is set up will allow his second soul to kind of stand with him and use those attributes together instead of separately. Yuno's also just in a much better state, I think. Age-wise, Yuno's in his prime. Though it might not mean much at the moment, Lucius is not at an age that is considered someone's prime, but of course he's rigged the game in such a way that it might not even matter. But I do think that part of this is going to lead up to Asta and Yuno having to duke it out. And I don't think it's going to be because Yuno did something wrong or Asta did something wrong. I think it's literally going to be because it won't be Yuno in his body. And the reason I think this is because there's a couple of instances, there's exactly two, in very vital moments of this series where Asta approaches Yuno so the first one is in the Alpharg, where they understand that, oh shit, like everyone with these marks on their faces and the pointy ears are trying to kill us. And Yuno was one of these people, but he was silent. He wasn't awake yet. And Asta comes in and kind of ignites that spark and brings Yuno to, and he's like, I'm still me. Do you have a problem with that? And Asta smiles and he's like, no. And then we get to just before the Spade of Soul, after Nocta brings Asta to the captain's meeting, and Yuno discloses that he's the Spade Prince, and so Asta kind of looks at him. He's like, "It doesn't. You're a prince of the Spade or something like that, but you're still you, huh?" And those two moments were they seemed so intentional to me, just because there might be a moment where Asta comes back to this battlefield, right? And Yuno isn't Yuno anymore. And I think that's going to be the most heartbreak that we see Asta get. And I'm not saying that we necessarily need a heartbreak or despair from Asta, right? But let's put it into context. Yuno has gone through a lot more mentally and emotionally than Asta ever has, ever. It's not even close. And the closest he ever got was Yami being kidnapped and then having to save him. He did save him, so all was well and good. We even got a family shot for Asta right at the end of that whole thing. What we got for Yuno in that same arc was how he had to bury his own friends and comrades because he wasn't strong enough to save them. Um, and all of the despair and heartbreak that he had going into this fight that drove him to become stronger. Asta has never had that. He's never ever had that. But having to be shipped away from the battlefield because he wasn't strong enough to protect Yuno, to come back to this battlefield now that Yuno is not himself, is probably the worst thing that could ever happen in Asta's world. And that's what I'm here for. Um, I really think that will come to fruition in one way or another. Um, no anime is an anime without the brothers fighting, and I think what sets this one apart is just that just simply ceases to exist as he is, due to this soul magic. Um, there was a bit of a dive on like what time magic, or I'm sorry, not time, but soul magic could entail for Lucius. Um, some potential spells that he's gotten the tuck because we haven't seen anything as far as soul magic goes outside of incarnations, um, being able to make a body and put a soul into it. That's all we've really seen. Not to say that those aren't incredible feats, but just imagine there's probably a lot more spells in there. And one of the spells that I was thinking, it might not be this exact phrasing, but it would be like metempsychosis. And so this is something you can look out. This is something talked about by philosophers back in the day, where it's essentially like reincarnation, but you're actively making a soul travel to another vessel in like real time. So we've seen incarnation, but we haven't seen a full reincarnation, um, which would be very interesting to see for Lucius. Um, and I think it's well within the Rolodex of his power, uh, because this whole not whole series, but the series is inspired by Bleach. He definitely does give off some Aizen vibes. Aizen did play this little game of like, who are you actually fighting? Because he did have them under this illusion that the captains were fighting him, but they were actually just killing their own teammates. And he appeared somewhere else, disguised as someone else, as one of their teammates, right, far away. Something like this could also happen. He's got the same kind of jewel in his chest that is obviously some type of I'm forgetting the name that they call it, but if you're like a Harry Potter geek, a Horcrux of sorts, right, that might contain his soul and his powers. So that's why Ryu is telling Asa, we've got to aim for that thing, because obviously it's special to what he's doing and what he is right now. So yeah, I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think it's at least worth the conversation, right? I had a few more chats in here. I got a Dremelec question mark. What about a Dremelec? We need a Asta Lucius flashback. What kind of flashback would Asta have though? We've seen his whole story, and he's basically seen most of his story too. Well, he didn't see it. Yeah, he did. So yeah, what kind of flashback would he get? I'm curious. Do you think there's any relation between Yuno and Yami clan, given the moon and star? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh wait, given the moon and that one's difficult. I've made the assertion before that Yami is the Yuno of Hino. It's they're both extremely special beings, right? But I people you're saying with like Ichika's star magic, and then Yuno's star magic, they're very similar. Yuno's is just a step above what Ichika's is. Um, I couldn't give you a clear answer. I couldn't give you a real clear answer on that, to be honest. Um, Leo, you said, I feel like Yuno's not going to come out of this fight without something lost. I don't know. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. I think he's going to lose himself, ultimately, because I mean, he's got okay. So let's put into context. He's got all of his stars, right? So he can dip out anytime he needs to. He can apply pressure anytime he needs to. It's going to be really hard for Lucius to keep up with it. I mean, if we're being real, with what Yuno has shown us, he could he could solo an entire kingdom if need be. I'm willing to say that much. Um, there's no magic that Lucius has access to right now, especially with Yuno having anti magic and that sword. Uh, that's gonna give Yuno a lot of an issue. Um, with all the stars at his disposal, there's no way. And I hand counted these stars when that chapter dropped. When he made the shield, he's swinging somewhere in like almost 200 ish stars. There's no there's no defeating that. There's nowhere you can escape. Uh, and you don't know where he's going to strike from next. Um, so it's tough. It's going to be a very big battle. It'll be really fun to watch. Um, but I think ultimately Lucius will make the contact needed to be able to take his body. Is what I think. But yeah, I think you're right. He's losing something for sure. I will say too something I forgot to add. With the sword, I think it's going to be really cool to see this too. With the archangels getting their amped forms, we haven't seen anything yet, but of course, no extreme form change in anime goes without an extreme power boost. Um, so what I think is going to happen is that, along with reinforcements that we will get, hopefully through Lily and Beelzebub, um, that Yuno is able to share anti magic with the people that he's connected to. Because he's got the full right to that sword, like I said earlier. And he's seen how that sword works as well. And he's not, I hate to say this, but he's not as stupid as Asta is. It's not going to take someone nudging him in that direction to be like, hey, you should try out this because, Licht did it. So we might see the Conquering Eon spell. He might be able to draw the magic from his comrades into a super massive spell to form against Lucius. He's got the key to the world right now, if we're being real. So we're going to see a lot, but as much as we're going to see, will lose. I think 100% for sure. Byron, good to see you, man. You said, Jack, do you see one or two other characters getting involved in the fight with Lucius? I don't know if you're here for it earlier, but I do think William will somehow get involved. Whether that be directly or not is, really the bigger question. All the people like William, Charlotte, and the Black Bulls have been relieved of their fights. They weren't fighting anyone huge. They were fighting, angels and whatnot. So the Black Bulls are already planning to go up to the Candelo. So I have to assume that William is also going there with Charlotte, especially with Gordon going there because he's the one keeping them really in the fight and allowing their powers to truly manifest the way it was supposed to. With that said, I think that's going to drive Yuno's elf to despair, and we'll see that 4-leaf turn into a 5-leaf. These kind of my thoughts there. But I think that was kind of all I had. But I wanted to go through some of the the lore behind the two souls, or how I frame it at least, because I think it's a really cool touch if it goes this way, right? Let me find it. So maybe I'll link it on my Twitter. But I made this whole mind map. I shared it with WK, just as like a sanity check to see like how far off the deep end am I. Let's see. Oh my gosh, guys! I didn't even complete like the two soul thing, um, and how Austin would be brothers. Um, so if we go back to what I was saying earlier, and how the two soul thing is an inherited trait, why ends up getting that second soul. Uh, there was a time when Julius was roaming the planet on his own, and it was never my favorite thought because it didn't make too much sense. Because there are a lot of things not taken into consideration. Because people were like, well, Julius has got to be Asa's dad because, whatever reason they got. But here's the kicker, right? So I was talking about quiet and loud souls. Um, Now when it, oh man, I really wish I could share my screen right now. The Let's paint the picture, right? We're gonna go a little bit into biology here. So if you know your Punnett square is good for you. If you don't, you're about to be taken for a little bit of a ride. But it shouldn't be too hard to understand, right? Let's think that you have a black chicken and a white chicken. Um, they do the thing. They lay the eggs. As scientists, we gotta make some predictions. What's what color chickens are going to come out of these eggs? Mom is white, dad is black. They lay 4 eggs. There's about a 50-50 chance that we will get a white egg out of one, a black egg out of that same one. 50-50 chance. Now, as things get a little bit more complicated, right? We get some different types of blending. We might not get a 50-50 trait. We might get a blend of traits where we get, instead of black or white, we get a gray chicken. Um, and this is incomplete dominance, right? So now let's say Julius and Lucida meet. Lucida has one soul, as far as we know. We should probably assume that she does. Julius, we now know, never had just one soul. He always had 2 souls. But if Julius goes and gets down and dirty with someone, the thing is that they're going to inherit a trait that he had. Now, remember when I said that the loud soul, if you have a loud second soul, it means they have no attribute, but they have their own conscious, their own personality that can even deviate from the lead soul. The thing that Julius would end up passing on is an attributeless soul, a soul without an attribute, which is then Asta. And I just to put in context, because I know people like the step-by-step stuff, I do too. But I say Julius has no magic because the time magic belongs to Astaroth. Damnatio makes this so clear, and I still get in debates with people on Twitter today, that Julius is Julius and Astaroth is Astaroth. I don't think that's the thing. I think Astaroth was incarnated into Julius, but that means they're essentially the same being. Julius never had an attribute. The attribute was given to him when the soul was incarnated into him, which is why he was able to get some semblance of a grimoire. But that's not a genetic thing. That is not something that is in his blood and in his flesh. What's in his flesh and in his blood is having no attribute, which is why Asta would have nothing. However, this could be attributed into his physiology. As we see, Asta's physical being has always been exceptional. He did work for most of it, but to be able to wield the 5 leaves, Zagrid points out how strange this is, because he says there's no other thing in this world in existence that should be able to wield a 5-leaf clover if it's not a devil. So what is this kid? Right? So he's got to have some type of physiology. Now, this also goes back to Lucius telling Xenon that, and in his flashback that he says that, oh, here, it's right on the screen. The greatest devil host potential in the history of our family. An exceptional being born with 2 souls in 1 body. So he also then tells Xenon he's got the best aptitude to host the devil. And then his siblings, Dante, are hosting Lucifero, the highest. And Vonik is hosting the replacement queen, or king. She's the step-in queen for Astaroth. The 3 highest. So these are very special connections to the devils. Noct then also reinforces all of this, saying, Asta, you have a very unique connection to your devil by being able to, sacrifice just that arm like that. It's not something we've seen anyone really do. I think, if anyone, Vonica comes the closest to that with her eye. But that didn't seem like it was like a willing thing that she did. It seemed like more of Megicula took over because things were getting a little bit too heavy at the moment. But then he has all these feats to be able to wield the power of a devil in his body directly without any type of medium, no sign of a contract anyway, right? No, nothing. He's really just freeballing this. He's raw dogging the shit out of devil hosting. And it was made clear that all of what he's doing is extremely special. So Julius and Lucida got together and had a kid. Their kid is going to also be the greatest devil host as far as potential goes. And that's exactly what we see out of Asta. This is why Noct even has never been able to achieve a perfect union with his devils. But he's also been able to form contracts with multiple devils. So he's special in that right. But he needs a medium. He can't do that on his own. So I say all this to say that it makes complete and total sense if Julius does end up being Asta's father, and Lucius being a separate thing, being Yuno's father as well. And I think it would really close the series out on something a bit more special, especially if Lucius takes Yuno's body to where Asta and Yuno are forced to fight, because now it's literally brothers fighting here. So I forgot to add that into the initial thought in the beginning, but it was something that, as I was formulating this thought, I was thinking like, if anything, it's cool to think about. It's really, really cool to have guys that considered themselves, brothers, to actually then find out that they are more or less brothers. So I think it'd just be awesome, in my opinion. So I'm gonna kind of read off of this mind map that I made that has all these ideas on it. And like I said, if anyone's interested, I'll probably end up linking that mind map so you can just kind of see how mixed up my neurons are. So the stem of this tree is called the Celestial and Spiritual Philosopher's Stones. And for context, Philosopher's Stone is not like, it's described in many ways. I think a lot of people misconstrue it as only being like a physical stone, when the Philosopher's Stone is, I think, first attributed to the perfection of a soul. And then the physical stone comes later as alchemy starts getting introduced to society. And there was one other thing, but anyway, yeah, let me just start reading this to you guys. You guys might find it a little interesting. So off of this, with the lineages of the celestial family split into the physical and metaphysical, this leads into Asta and Yuno becoming the perfect beings in their own right. So to kind of break that down, by the celestial families, I mean Ciel's family, or maybe even just Lois's, and Lucius's family. So Lucius is the metaphysical, and I think here I have Lucius as a separate, uh, as a split in the bloodline. So like maybe a brother to CL, which would make him Yuno's uncle. Uh, I haven't looked at this in like a couple of weeks, um, but I think I ended up running with Lucius being Yuno's uncle and CL's brother. So the split in that bloodline becomes um, CL gets the moon magic, which I said earlier, moons are related to souls in some mythology, but in Greek mythology, it definitely is. Um, Lois, not Lois, but CL, oh my god, names. Lucius gets this metaphysical portion of the soul, and that's where the bloodline is split. Now, a tangent that leads nowhere else off of this branch of thought says Ciel and Lois created Yuno, who's able to wield star magic and rules the heavens and the winds. Obviously, the story that we got, which is why that leads into a dead end. Um, but off of the other branch, we get Lucida and Julius created Asta, who lacks magic but may be able to access a power much greater than even that of Lucius. Then there are three branches, so I will start with um, the longest branch here that gives us a little bit more insight as far as lore goes, and that one just ends there. The second one also ends where it is, but then the third one has one other branch of thought that goes off of it. So here's the first branch, leads nowhere, but does give you a bit of the lore behind what I'm thinking. So we know that Lucius has soul magic, which grants him the ability to dictate the flow of souls and their constitution. Though Lucius in this situation is not the dominant personality, it is within the realm of possibility that Julius is still able to pass along some type of genetic code that allows for access to the power of their ancestors. Given that Lucius would represent the sibling of Selene, Helios, and Eos, the quiet soul of Ciel, which is Eos, we need to backtrack to what exactly lies in the genetics of this lineage. The Titans that birthed Selene, Helios, and Eos were Theia and Hyperion. Their parents were Gaia and Uranus. Gaia was the mother of Earth, and Uranus, the god of the heavens, who ruled over the cosmic order, stars, and destiny. So then going into this second branch, we have, much like how the lineage was split with Ciel and Lucius, it may have happened with Gaia and Uranus. Gaia is what paved the way for the physical body, which might make Uranus the father of mana and the metaphysical. So now going into the third branch, we see Asta being someone born of a father who was the loud, magicless soul with the incarnated physiology of a supreme devil linked to a lineage of mages who were born of gods and goddesses, who shaped the world and the heavens. It allowed Asta access to a power that is not as flashy as celestial or soul magic, but may have allowed him to tap into what would become the Anima Mundi, otherwise known as the world's soul. So I kind of just threw an extra thing in there that I didn't get into here. Buzz, good to see you. Kind of good to be back. Kind of a wonky stream, but good to be back. So as far as the Anima Mundi goes, I don't say this as often as I should, but I don't think Asta is just simply magicless. I do think he will tap in with the Earth Spirit if he is not himself this Earth Spirit, or Libe, the Earth Spirit as well. The Earth Spirit has got to be special, has to be. And it's not going to be it's not going to have an Earth attribute. I truly don't think that's what comes out of that. Since most of the magic in this series is based off of Greek lore, the Anima Mundi would make the most sense. This is the world's soul. So where Lucius is able, it drives the parallel, which is what I also like, is that Lucius is able to control the flow of single souls, of people. But Asta is able to, in this sense, would have this almost like Spirit Bomb Goku type of access to souls, where he's not manipulating them, but he can tap in with them. And we see a bit of an instance like this with Patri when he saved him from himself. Um, that's not a feature of that sword. Um, it's not a feature of anti magic. That was something entirely separate from both of those things. Um, so yeah, I have Asta with this power that he does somehow obtain later, but I think that's gonna require him to lose Libe as well, um, which means he loses anti magic, which I'm totally fine with, because that would be a much more superior power to have anyway. Um, but yeah, that's the meaning of that last part there. But off of that part, I say where Lucius uses his like kind of just said all of that, but it says where Lucius uses his soul magic to assimilate the entire world, Astos uses his power to connect people of even different species. Astos even shown the ability to enter the deepest recesses of someone's soul. This power goes even further when Lucius realizes that Astos tampered with every possible timeline through his influence. This means that Astos changed people down to their very souls so that they not only grew stronger, but behaved differently than they would have in other timelines. Um, so that's that whole tree of thought that I find pretty cool. Um, I will go over this. Probably this tree is the last one. I have one other one. I'm gonna skim over one. There's one that's really short, but I kind of already talked about it, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Um, okay, great. Means nothing. So matter useless and okay. Yeah, we went over everything. So yeah, this will be the last tree that I go over, but this one's probably going to be a bit harder to follow. So I will, um, I'll take a little bit of time making sure that it's clear what I'm trying to say. So this branch or this tree is labeled Austin, or actually brothers. Uh, and so these branches are a little bit more complicated. I will link this so you can see how these connect. But anyway, one of the first branches is assume that two souls is a hereditary trait. We talked about this. This makes producing children a more complicated process. To conceptualize it, if two people with one soul have a child, the product is a child with one soul. If one of the two parents has two souls, then we might get a product where the child either has one soul or two souls. If it has two souls, the soul might be quiet, like Yuno's was for most of his life. If both people have two souls, this will definitely result in a child with two souls, but the second soul is quiet or is not quiet, a loud soul, like the last, but has its own personality, which is what Lucius ended up with. Off of this are two branches. Um, the first one that also leads back into another branch is the quiet soul's personality does not have its own personality and is very much in line with the dominant soul, but has a separate magic type. The loud soul has its own personality separate from the dominant soul, but does not have its own magic. Due to this lacking existence, the soul may need to siphon magic and life energy from the dominant host. I'm sure I explained that in this next thing before I start yapping. I do. Okay. So this branches into a little bit of a dead end. So after this, I'll go back through what I just read, and then leading into the next branch. So this says Lucius's health could be due to the fact that the loud soul siphons life and magic from him, leaving him in a decrepit state. This may have caused Lucius to devise a plan to ensure that his life isn't shortened, but then to also take advantage of what the loud soul is able to do. Binding and incarnating a supreme devil to Julius meant that Lucius could relinquish his role as a dominant soul to Julius, while he siphons magic and life continuously without Julius. Dude, there's no fucking way. I swear where I live is the quietest place. And I had the same issue when I was actively doing YouTube. every time I cut this fucking video on, the loudest things start happening outside my window. It is absurd. Okay, I'm just gonna start that little paragraph over again. My bad. It's my ADHD. It's not you guys. It's my ADHD. Okay. Binding and incarnating a supreme devil to Julius meant that Lucius could relinquish his role as the dominant soul to Julius while he siphons magic and life continuously without Julius ever noticing because of how vast Astaroth's magic is, and not siphoning life energy from him because the incarnation then gives Julius the ability to not be affected by attacks on the soul, much like we see with Asta in the Shadow Palace. So one part I didn't say in the beginning was that I I did kind of say that it could be due to a curse. And the reason why I wrote this down in the mind map here is just because um, we see Henry. He gets cursed and he's siphoning just magic from people. But we also then see Lucida, and she's siphoning both magic and life from people. So we're kind of led to believe that they were cursed, and these were the effect of that curse, whatever that may have been. So now I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to read the previous branch and then go into a sister branch so that it still makes sense and we're not just like jumping around. So backtracking, we talk about the quiet and loud soul differences. The quiet soul's personality doesn't have its own personality and is very much in line with the dominant soul, but has a separate magic type. The loud soul has its own personality, separate from the dominant soul, but does not have its own magic attribute. Due to this lacking existence, the soul may need to siphon magic and life energy from the dominant host. So now into the sister branch, we have the quiet and loud souls would be hereditary in and of themselves. Directly attributing this to the series, CL would have been a vessel with two souls, but the second soul is quiet, like Yuno's is, which may suggest that she could have a second magic type to go along with it. Lucius has a loud soul, which is Julius, who has his own personality but does not have magic. If this is the case, then that means their parents both had two souls, but one parent had a loud soul and the other had a quiet soul, thus producing two children that have a loud and quiet soul, respectively. So that's just a bit of biology, right? Now, stemming from there, we say that Asta joins this fray as a candidate who may have been a product of one parent having an extra loud soul. So this means that one of his parents with two souls had another soul who had a soul with its own personality but no magic to call their own. This introduces the only known way to operationalize a human being born with no magic whatsoever. If that second soul becomes a dominant soul and attempts to have a child, then there's nothing that they could pass to their child. If Julius and Lucida were Asta's parents, then this would mean that the loud soul of Lucius would have passed on the trait of having no magic onto Asta. If Julius had no magic, then we have to assume that Lucius bound Astaroth to Julius' soul specifically. This binding was not just the run-of-the-mill ritual, but a binding using soul magic to incarnate Astaroth into the soul of Julius so as to have not a third soul, but a single soul made of two beings. This becomes important when we see Zagrid release monsters from the other world to drain everything of life and magic, but Asta remained unaffected by them despite being completely consumed by them, as well as having a mother who does this naturally. From here, the assumption becomes that Asta was given the physiology of a devil, the lack of magic from the dominant loud soul, and that link to the other twin, which is the Liebe Lick Sun theory, to the other twin soul that Yuno also shares. So that's more so alluding to the fight against Zagrid that we see once Yuno powers up and gains the Sword of Zephyr. That's the first time we see Black Divider, and they're side by side with Yuno using his left hand for his sword, and that's where his magic is manifesting, while Asta's anti-magic manifests on his right side, and Asta uses his right hand. They seem to complete each other, and the way that anti-magic does not affect Yuno's magic in that scenario kind of indicates there might be a deeper level of dynamic between the magic that Yuno is using, or at least the elf inside of him is using, and Liebe's power, anti-magic. But yeah, those were some of the things that I didn't necessarily touch all the way on in this live, but that's kind of it. Um, one, I'll give like maybe a couple more minutes. If you guys have any questions about my thoughts or post your own thoughts in the chat, so we can yap about it a little bit. That'd be cool. If not, I'm cool with ending the stream. I haven't eaten anything yet. I'm thinking I might go with like Dave's Hot Chicken. Bro, if you don't got a Dave's Hot Chicken where you live, you're missing out. Because that shit is so good. And I get Reaper every time. Every time. If it's not Reaper, it's a bust. Then again, I might get Burger King, bro. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of a slut for Burger King. I don't know what it is. I think it's the bread. They got like sweet bread, and I fuck with that heavy. So, might be Burger King. Shit, I might fuck around and make a salad. I don't know. Salad sounds kind of bomb. You ever have like those foods where like you say you want something, but it really just means you want like a specific condiment? Like if I say I want hot dogs, I mean I want ketchup and mustard and maybe relish. Like I don't really want the actual hot dog, but I'm not gonna just start drinking ketchup and mustard and relish. I'm gonna have them top the hot dog. So the hot dog is more like the side dish in the situation. It's a means to an end, right? Whereas I'm really, really in it for the condiments. If I say I want a taco or burrito, no. It's a little bit different for the burrito. I'll say if I want a taco, I really want tortilla. I really want the tortilla. Um, I can eat the tortilla by itself, to be honest with you. Like, I could do that for sure. I have. Shit. I'll always do that. But if I say I want a taco, I'm really, really craving the tortilla. If I say I want a burrito, though, I mean, I want the heaviest dose of guacamole you can give me. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm only in it for the guac. If it ain't got guac, I don't want it in my mouth. Straight up. Straight like that. I don't know if there's any other food that I think of like that, but it's just, those are the ones that come to mind. But yeah. Shit. Yeah, I think those are the only. Oh no, okay. So like the salad. That's the whole reason why we got here. If I say I want salad, it means I want like some type of ranch or like dressing, right? So, I'll put all the healthy stuff in there. Some tomatoes, cucumbers, shaved carrots and shit. Of course, lettuce and all that stuff. But then like, boom, I just grab that big giant bottle of ranch and I just dump the whole thing out in there. And like, I'm really just in it for the ranch at that point. So that's what I mean. If I do like chicken wings, I want whatever sauce that comes with it. I'll do like Tabasco sauce. Like, sometimes I'd be craving Tabasco. People shit on Tabasco sauce, and I don't get it. That shit's so good. It tastes like vinegar. No shit. Like, it's delicious. Or like barbecue sauce. Boom. Oh my god. Yeah. Buffalo sauce. Give me that. Give me that expeditiously. But yeah, I'm not in it for the chicken though. I'm in it for the sauce that comes with the chicken. You hand me some dry ass fucking chicken, I swear to God, I'll kill you on the spot. Like, get that shit out of my face. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at in life. I don't know where you guys are at, but you're here watching this, listening. So thank you for that. You could have been anywhere right now, but you chose to listen to me rant about condiments and how I choose to live my life alongside them. With that said, since I don't see any new comments, I feel like I've weirded you guys out quite enough for the night. And I've got my setup kind of back. I'll figure out how to really get more in depth with this. My setup changed a little bit, but I should be able to figure something out so that I can be more in depth and show you guys cool pictures and all that stuff, and maybe go through Twitter like the old days like we did. So yeah, like I said, you guys really could have been anywhere, but you guys showed up for your boy, and I appreciate that a lot. I see like almost every name in this chat has pretty much been a ride or die for all these years. So truly thank you. Um, and yeah, I will see you guys when I see you guys. It has been Jack Oates the GOAT. You either know or you don't.